The construction site supervisor was whipping the robots and not allowing them to rest. The robots fell to the ground, but the supervisor showed no sympathy and continued to curse at them. 2 robots carried objects that were twice their weight with difficulty. They threw the objects into the ruins, and the task was completed. They breathed a sigh of relief, but tomorrow they would continue to be whipped. The supervisor even stepped on one of them and beat it brutally. At this moment, another robot grabbed the supervisor's head and pulled it hard. To everyone's surprise, the supervisor's head came off, revealing many wires. It turned out that the supervisor was a robot. They finally gained their freedom by throwing the supervisor into the ruins. The 2 robots dismantled the parts on their bodies, revealing that they were the true humans. The world is now dominated by robots, and humans have become their slaves. With the development of AI, what do you think the ultimate fate of humanity will be? My game-addicted son plays games all day long without so much as blinking, which causes me great distress. He has been sitting on the couch all morning, sweating profusely and exhausted from playing. Seeing him like this makes me very angry, but I had other things to attend to, so I left him alone for the time being. As the day wore on and evening approached, he was still sitting there, putting on a hood to prevent any outside interference. I couldn't stand it anymore. He was pushing my limits. I stormed over and slapped him, and the phone fell to the ground, though I don't know how much it hurt him. But soon I was stunned. My son had turned into a corpse, with shrunken facial features, a stiff body, and lifeless eyes. Then my attention was drawn to the phone screen. It turned out that he had become so immersed in the game that he had lost his soul. Let me remind everyone that moderate gaming can be good for you, but addiction to gaming can be harmful.
What kind of nightmare did a mother have when she lost her little baby in her dream? The story begins with a mother and her little baby sleeping comfortably in bed. Just then, the woman dreamt of a monster roaring with an open mouth and sharp claws. The monster then reached out to grab the baby, a terrifying moment. At the last moment, the mother opened her eyes, already drenched in sweat. True to her dream, her little baby was nowhere to be found. The mother was extremely worried, but she hugged a toy flying saucer and went back to sleep, not knowing what to do. It turned out that the mother wanted to use the flying saucer to rescue her child. Eventually, through the mother's tireless efforts, she found the monster and used a laser to save her little baby. Shortly after, the mother awoke in tears. Fortunately, her little baby appeared by her side, and she hugged her child and cried at how real the dream felt. I rented an old house that was rumored to be haunted because the rent was relatively cheap. Despite the rumors, the house was surprisingly spacious and not as ominous as I had anticipated. However, the walls were adorned with numerous clocks, which gave the place an eerie vibe. One night, while I was sleeping, I suddenly woke up with the urge to use the bathroom. In my dazed state, I stumbled towards the restroom and was startled to find a stranger in the house, engrossed in a book. I quickly grabbed a baseball bat, ready to confront the intruder. The stranger darted away into the hallway, and I chased after him, only to discover a massive time machine in the house. The stranger fiddled with the clocks and vanished in a flash of light, leaving behind the book he had been reading. To my amazement, the author was Dr. Elson, who had invented the time machine and was a time traveler. I eagerly anticipated meeting him again and forming a friendship with a fellow time traveler. Peter and his 2 friends went on an adventure in the forest at night. The sign warned that there were ghosts and monsters in the forest at night and no one should enter without permission, but Peter ignored it. He laughed and said that there were no such things as ghosts and monsters in the world. However, his friends were scared out of their wits and ran away. Peter thought his friends were too timid and decided to explore the forest alone. As he walked, he was suddenly surrounded by a pack of wolves. He bravely scared them off, but soon after, he encountered a bear. Peter was so scared that he fumbled and dropped his flashlight. But he still bravely shouted at the bear, and it ran away in fear. Peter thought he was very brave and happily picked up his flashlight. However, at that moment, the flashlight shone on a terrifying face above the trees. It turned out that the animals were scared away by that terrifying face, including Peter's 2 friends. Did you see that terrifying face too? Have you had any strange and unexplainable encounters in the forest? Feel free to share. Jazz was holding an engagement ring in the park. He had arranged to meet Dora and intended to propose to her, and the birds in the park were also happy for him. Jazz ran over excitedly, but a truck accidentally hit Jazz. After the accident, Jazz tried to pick up the wedding ring that had fallen on the road while dragging his injured body, but then the Grim Reaper arrived and took him away before he could retrieve the ring. On the other side of the park, Dora had been waiting for a long time and Jazz never arrived. Suddenly, a bird flew over and dropped the wedding ring into Dora's hand. The bird left the ring with Dora. Dora looked at the ring and saw Jazz's and her own name engraved inside. Dora broke down and cried, knowing that Jazz would never be able to keep their date. Let us love with our hearts, never giving up any opportunity to express love, because life is short and precious.
May worked overtime until very late today and caught the last bus. There were only a few people on the bus, including a strange-looking father and son who sat behind May. May was happily looking at her phone when suddenly the man behind her leaned over and peeked at her phone screen. May felt very uncomfortable and quickly turned to the left, but the boy also leaned over. May decided to stand up, walk to the front seat, and continue to look at her phone. Soon, May felt someone breathing behind her and found that the heads of the father and son were right behind her. But their bodies were still in their original seats. Have you ever encountered a similar situation where someone peeks at your privacy on public transportation? Please leave comments below and discuss.
This is a story about a family who lost their beloved child. The child's soul returns home one night, bringing an unexpected surprise to the parents. They play games and share stories together until dawn. As day broke, the child became increasingly tired and eventually fell asleep in their mother's arms. The child eventually transforms into a beam of light and disappears into the mother's belly, revealing that she is pregnant. Years later, their daughter is born, looking exactly like her brother. The parents believe that their child's soul has returned. Even though they lost their most beloved person, love and hope remain by their side, and life goes on. Have you ever heard of a deceased child being reincarnated and becoming their mother's child again? Feel free to share your thoughts.
The class fund was stolen. As class treasurer, I took matters into my hands and got my classmate, Sean, to discuss with me about the theft. Zach must have done it. Zach's epilepsy suddenly struck. After that, Zach was taken to the hospital. I fled the scene in a panic. That night, I couldn't sleep until 2 a.m. I had no idea how Zach's condition was doing. I'm sorry. I didn't intend to kill you. Forgive me. I found an envelope filled with money in front of the window. It was the class fund I was looking for. The next morning, I received a call from the class monitor. Zach was discharged from the hospital yesterday evening, thank God. However, Sean, who ran away yesterday in a moment of fright, was knocked down by a truck on the road, and died on the spot. Last night, the figure creeping outside the window. It was not Zach.